Gamer Leaf, the podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
Creatures infused with the very magics of the land lay siege to the many races and kingdoms. The dwarves ran to their caves, seeking refuge from attacks, sealing themselves away. Elves used their remaining magic to conjure a protective dome around their capital, keeping them isolated for the next 500 years. The cat people ran to the jungles, disappearing. The honorable Canaan, north of the great mountains, went further, and humanity was all that's left to fend off the creatures hell-bent on destruction. Through the Magi Elders, we had worked on seals to seal away each creature. Now, almost 5 centuries later, they've begun to break. The creatures have begun resurfacing, and the only chance humanity has left is the greatest champions.
Sound familiar to you guys? It didn't sound familiar to me either. But this is the story of Tabula Rasa, a colorful pull bag building game of champions that's not currently on Kickstarter. And we're lucky enough to have on the creator mastermind behind it, Chris. Is that correct, Chris? Is that how you fall into line with this game?
Yep, that is, sir.
Cool beans. So let's rewind a little bit firsthand. How did you get into the whole tabletop board gaming hobby?
I was a writer. I worked in television for a couple of years, pitched a few pilots, and it was just a grind. It was every year was you work up until pilot season, you pitch, or you take your game on the independent or your TV show on the independent route. And it was tiring. I wanted something different to do, and I started volunteering at conventions for the really popular Japanime Games brand, running Crossmaster tournaments, just being involved with Crossmaster in general. And the owner of that company, Mr. Price, and the way that they run all of their volunteer programs just really got me excited to be in that community. TV is super cutthroat, and then when you see like the gaming community and how competitors act with each other in the gaming community, it's just totally different. Everyone is there to give advice and help, even if they're directly competing with you. So that's how I got my start, and I've loved every second since.
So you said Crossmaster, or what was the name of the company?
Crossmaster was distributed at the time by Japanime Games. It is not anymore.
Oh, okay. Cool beans.
But that was like my thing for like 2-3 years, volunteering at conventions, just kind of learning the industry that way.
Cool beans. So, did they have a favorite game at the time that they made? I guess they were a game producer.
Yeah, they weren't like a game producer at the time. They were just a publisher, right? So they didn't design their own games. They just took games from other people. So like Crossmaster, for instance, is actually on Kama's game, and they just published it here in the U.S. But that was definitely my favorite game that they had, and to this day, it's still my favorite game that they published.
And it's called Akamas, is that what you said?
Yeah, Crossmaster was on Kama, Ankama, I think.
What can you tell us about that game? I never heard of that, Akama.
Well, Crossmaster, yeah, it was this competitive game with these really gorgeous, disproportionate, like chibi, but bigger miniatures. They were all pre-painted. It was a competitive game. You would build like your little team of guys and play against my team of guys. They turned it into a digital game as well. It was pretty big. Apparently it's still really big in France, where the anime that originated the game is from, Europe. I mean, it's not as big in the U.S. anymore, just because that's such a competitive market here, but it's still super big over there.
Cool beans. So let's see here. So is that how did you go from TV to that? Did somebody introduce you, or are you just looking at a flyer in the paper or something? Or
No. I mean, I had like dabbled in not, I guess, tabletop games, but I remember being, just a small kid going to the local Shinders here in Minnesota with my brother, and we would he, because he was the only one with a job at the time. I was, like 8 or whatever. Getting Magic cards. I mean, I started playing Magic tournaments locally here in Minnesota, and that was like my first foray into tabletop card games and board games. And throughout the years, playing role-playing games with him, board games with him as a kid, that it was definitely an interest of mine. I just didn't think it was a viable career path, or something you could really sink your teeth into and deliver products or anything like that. It wasn't something I thought I could do.
Cool beans. So going from in TV to volunteer and whatnot, how does somebody go from there to producing games?
Well, again, yeah, it's a great community. You have people that run these publishing companies that just genuinely want to make the community better. And so when you volunteer for companies at conventions, you learn a lot. You learn how to pitch games, because they have X amount of time to pitch these people that are at these conventions to buy a game. They have this amount of time to pitch them on that game and sell it to them. So you learn about that. You learn about, the logistics of running a convention or running a tournament. And, along the way, you're able to ask questions like, a lot of smaller companies don't ask questions about, like, what do you do keeping inventory of your own games? You run a Kickstarter and you get X amount of copies of your games. Some go out to the backers, but, until you're selling the rest of the games, where do you put them? And so when you volunteer for a company, Greater Than Games is another company that I had volunteered for at a time, that there are just so many companies out there that want to give advice and they want to help the industry. And one of the ways is, to tell you, here's our experience in, how to store games, produce games, find artists, design games, or develop games. It's actually really easy if you're asking the right questions to the right people.
Cool beans. So the word on the street is you have a new game on Kickstarter. Well, I guess it's wrapping up here pretty soon here, but what can you tell us about it?
Well, we're at about the halfway point, but it's Tabula Rasa. It's our first big game for our LLC that it funded in the first week, which is awesome. Being up against, there's always something big on Kickstarter. But it's a bag or a pool building game. I'm still a little confused as to the terminology there. Each person I talk to calls it something different. And the game is essentially a race. Players are trying to complete quests and amass glory. Their champion wants to have the most glory by the time this dungeon essentially is cleared out. And completing those quests and stuff is going to require players to, if you've ever played a deck building game, it has a similar feel, but rather than cards, we use these really nice acrylic crystals. And players are going to be trying to build crystals that synergize with their character's gear and their character's abilities, the threats that they're fighting better. And obviously the player that I would say most efficiently builds an engine with their bag is usually, the player that comes out on top.
Cool. Yeah, I'm big into I like the deck builders. So you're building the pool with the crystals in, I guess?
Yeah, so each champion has their own abilities. And in a bag or a pool building game, you're more limited than a deck building game because you can't write a ton of text on each card. So we effectively have 5 colors in the game right now. 6 if you count the clear, generic crystals that every champion starts with. And each of those colors does something different for each champion. So purple for this champion might let him deal damage and draw more crystals, but purple for this champion might let him destroy crystals he doesn't want from his discard. So each champion uses the crystals in a different way.
Oh, okay, cool bean. And so you're trying to create the most crystals, or how does somebody go about winning the game?
Well, at the beginning of the game, we have this setup that's contingent on how many players there are. So we'll put out quests based on the player count. And some quests will want you to engage foes. So the banners have sent these champions into the dungeon, and they want you to complete these tasks. They'll say, clear out this many elite foes, or collect this much rare gems in there for our banner. And the end game is triggered when so many of these banners are completed, or you've drawn the ire or threat track has reached its max for the essentially the boss of the dungeon. Players will have this giant final confrontation with the boss, and then after that boss is defeated, we'll count up glory points, and someone's going to have the most, someone's going to win.
Okay, so glory points, cool. Cool. Now, how would the play look? Well, no, I mean, this is a podcast after all. How would it sound if me and you were to sit down to play this game?
Honestly, again, it goes back to, like, we took a lot of influence from deck building games, right? So at the beginning of your turn, you're going to have this felt bag. You're going to pull essentially your pool or your hand of crystals from that bag, and you're going to spend your crystals during your turn. That's your turn. You're going to spend them, and you can spend them to move around the board. Moving around the board allows you to engage foes, and that helps you complete certain quests. Moving around the board helps you find items. That helps you complete certain quests. It helps you explore. So you want to move around the board, but at the same time, while you're moving, you're pulling all of these enemies. So if you've ever played a game like World of Warcraft or something like that, and you have a character who pulls the threat of enemies, that's kind of what this is. And so to keep progressing and keep beating these quests, you have to confront all of these enemies that you're pulling along the way. And that's where the optimizing your bag comes in. And so every turn, you'll, like I said, pull these crystals and you'll spend them to move around, but you're also managing spending them to defeat these different creatures or monsters that you've pulled out as well. And at the end of every turn, if you haven't defeated them, you're taking damage. And if you take enough damage to be knocked out, there's no player elimination, but you're definitely set back all the way to the start of the dungeon, and you'll lose some of the progress that you've made.
Cool. So is it kind of like well, you said not deck building, but a pool building, kind of like deck building, and dungeon crawl kind of at the same time, I guess?
Yeah, I would compare it to Renegade Games had a game come out recently, Clank, and then Clank in Space. And in Clank, there's kind of a spatial element to the board where you're deck building and then you're moving through the dungeon. We have a similar feel, but where you move in the dungeon has just a lot more impact. In our game, it's like that, but where you move in the dungeon determines, there are cubes, which enemies you pull, like the strength of the enemies you pull, and then there's also items to find in each area that are random too.
Oh, okay, cool beans. And let's see here. So was there a game or something that inspired the whole thing on making Tabula Rasa?
Part of it was, we're working on multiple games in the future. One of them is a tactical minis game, and so the world of Tabula Rasa is kind of inspired by like that Final Fantasy tactics feel or that Final Fantasy feel. And the game itself, yeah, we absolutely love deck builders. They're obviously hugely popular, but they're also really, I just want to say, overdone. There are a couple of innovations that we've seen in deck building. I brought up Clank. That's definitely one of them, adding like a spatial element. Mm-hmm. But there's not a lot of pool building games. And so if you look at like Orleans or whatever, that's a good pool building game. There was Hyperborea with cubes. That was a cool pool or bag building game. But there's just not a lot of them, and they haven't like caught fire like deck builders have, where you can sit down with any gamer and say, yeah, it's a deck building game, and they'll kind of have, in their head, they'll kind of be like, oh yeah, okay, I know what I'm doing here then, to some extent. Pool building is not that recognizable, but it's that similar, right? It's a similar mechanism.
So, and what reviewers, it looks like there might be a couple of reviewers that have reviewed it on your Kickstarter page. Who all has taken a gander at it, and what did they have to say?
So we have a couple of copies out there right now with reviews that'll be posted in the final couple of weeks here. I try to spread them out just because Kickstarters really annoy me when you have 7 reviews come out in one day. Most of us board gamers are subscribed to all of these people on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So as a content creator, we need staggered content, I would say.
For sure.
And so we started off with we have a lot of local stores here in Minnesota. They're backing the game for however many copies they want to carry on their shelf. Oh, cool. And they were the first ones to get a sense of the game. I know a lot of the local store owners from running volunteer programs and obviously being a patron of their stores. And so they were the first ones to kind of get a feel for the game. We've had a few say that this game definitely replaces Bag Builders just because of the presence it has on a table. I don't think there's anyone that's seen Tabula Rasa on a table that doesn't say it's definitely one of the prettiest games they've seen, just because of all of the acrylic pieces and the art that our illustrator Ellie and our graphic designer Dallas have done for the game. It's stunning, and it's smooth. That's one thing that I've heard constantly is we went through like 6 iterations in the design of this game, because every time we had played it, it was like, oh, this part feels clunky or this part feels forced. And now we're to the point where, when we were getting ready to ramp up to release, that's every piece of feedback was, this game hums, it is smooth, the gameplay does not clunk at all, it is just a smooth experience. So local stores, yeah, they have feedback out, and obviously have skin in the game. They're backing the game and commenting on the game. And a large German distributor, we have a play test group that I'm friends with over near Essen, Germany, that my buddy David Metzler runs out there. So there's a large German distributor taking a look at the game. They've played the game and have said that the game feels better and more innovative than any other pool builder game. So we'll see when the reviews come out, but I've heard good things preemptively. Obviously, they have to finish editing and post said reviews, but I've heard good things from them, obviously, as well. So
Cool. Yeah. So it looks like some of the local stores, if I'm looking at this right, Your Mom's Basement, Hot Comics, and Collectibles, and the Outpost 2000 and Beyond. Is that right?
yeah, those are 3 of them. I think we have 9 local stores backing right now. Those are just the first ones that came to me.
Wow. So how did you get that? You just played a lot at the stores or whatnot? Because I don't hear a lot of that. I hear a lot of stores typically want to shy away from Kickstarter, from what I've heard.
That's been my weird experience with Kickstarter. Is I have an easier time attracting retailers, distributors, or stores, especially stores here in the Midwest, as opposed to individual backers. And I don't get it. I think when you offer, a discount, like we offer a retailer pledge, that, to my understanding, is a similar discount to what a distributor would offer them. But the difference is they're not getting a retail copy from me for the distributor price. They're getting a Kickstarter copy from me. So right now, currently, we have 3 or 4 stretch goals unlocked. So they're getting an enhanced copy of the game as opposed to a retail copy of the game. And on top of that, again, when you establish these relationships with local store owners, if you value them, they value you. That's, my experience in the industry is if you value people, you show them that you value them, they will show you the same in kind. Obviously, running a store, they want to make money. So if the game wasn't good, obviously they wouldn't be backing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's good. So who will, so we can look out for them, who are a couple of the reviewers to look out for that they're going to be posting reviews, do you think?
I had talked to Rob Oren. He does stuff for the Dice Tower. I talked to Ant Lab Games. And then I had talked to a small reviewer who it would be their first review posted. So I will wait to allow them to announce it on the final week there. But those are the 3 we had talked to during the campaign.
So, per se, somebody's fallen asleep during the podcast. It wouldn't be because of you or your game, but they're probably tired of my voice and listening to my podcast. Why should they, and they've suddenly been jolted awake so they don't hit the oncoming traffic, why should they take a chance on Tabula Rasa as opposed to all the other great games they have on Kickstarter currently?
Well, a couple of reasons. Obviously, I think everyone should support. If you look at my personal Kickstarter page or even our company Kickstarter page, I think first-time developers, I think first-time publishers, I think small publishers all should be valued, all should be backed. Everyone's gonna, of course, want to back a cool mini game or whatever pops up on Kickstarter from these big companies, but the spirit of Kickstarter is for good products from small companies, and that's what we are. Obviously, we don't want to be that forever, and with people's help backing, we definitely can get to that point. The other reason I would say is it's just a good value. For the people in the US especially, it's $55 for a $60 game. It's free shipping, and we're adding extra things to the game. It's not a light game, it's a heavy game.
Cool. Cool.
So I would say just value.
Cool beans. That sounds cool. Now, I don't know if you've listened to any of our podcasts, but the next section on our podcast is called Adventures in Application Acquisition, where we talk about an application, whether it be for a tablet or cell phone or computer or even a video game. It doesn't have to be necessarily related to either dealing with business or even dealing with tabletop gaming. But is there a application that you like or that you've been using a lot of recently?
It is going to pertain to gaming because I downloaded it just yesterday, but I got an invitation. I got an invitation. We're talking about bag and pool building games here. Legendary, the app on my Android phone. It just popped up the other day. Jason Brenner, Upper Deck, posted a thing about it, and I downloaded that, and I love Legendary, the deck builder, the Marvel one. So I thought I'd give the fantasy app on my phone a try, and it has been awesome.
Cool. So somebody listening and hasn't seen that yet, what can you tell us about it?
It is the Marvel Legendary deck builder, but with a fantasy theme. So if like the Marvel superhero theme wasn't doing it for you, but the gameplay was cool, this app is awesome. And if you liked the Marvel version and just want to carry it around, this is similar. Characters in the game, there's an elf chick who feels very much like Black Widow from the original set. So it's kind of like I'm playing the Marvel deck builder, but I am not. It's the same game, just a different theme. It's awesome.
Cool beans. So if you own the rights to that application, what would be one thing that you would do to make it better, Chris?
Well, right now it's in beta, so obviously it's, I guess it would be unfair for me to say, but right now the beta has like really limited options in terms of, the heroes you recruit and put in your hero deck and the villains that you can face off. So just more, with any deck builder, that's what I want. I just want more.
So more than more options or more pool building or more of what?
More cards. I want more cards in this game. With Marvel Legendary, the physical game, I'm super spoiled. I have a giant 5,000 card thing full of it, but with this, I have one option for everything, so I want more. If you're listening, Jason Brenner, I want you to add more.
There you go. You heard it here first on Getting Geeky with Gamers, and especially during beta. Hopefully you're listening and you can fix that so when everybody is able to enjoy it, you'll be able to have more. So that'd be great. Thanks, Chris. And let's see here. So yeah, we don't want to keep you all night, but we really appreciate you coming on Getting Geeky with Game Relief. So minus coming there to Minnesota to stalk you in person, how would people go about finding you, Chris, or about your company and games you have coming?
Well, we have a website, kidlovestigergames.com. You can find us through the Kickstarter at, our profiles, Kid Loves Tiger Games. All of our info is on there. Contact info is on there. Also, you can find us on Facebook. As you know, we respond to Facebook messages pretty quick. Myself, Ben, any of us would be happy to answer or get together and game with people if you guys came up here to Minnesota.
Cool beans. So how did you guys come up with the name Kid Loves Tiger Games? Is there anything behind that?
Calvin and Hobbs. I think Calvin and Hobbs is arguably the most impactful cartoon, I would say, of all time. And he was from here, just like Schultz, the Peanuts creator, and he was just phenomenal at crafting a story. And around the time that we had started the LLC, my missus was pregnant with her first kid, so we were talking about board game publisher names, and that just came to mind.
Oh, cool. I like it. So Calvin and Hobbs, cool. And he's from where you're at?
Yeah, Sam Waterston is originally from up here, so.
Cool beans. Cool. And this sorry, one more thing. So somebody back in the game, I know you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but when should they anticipate getting their game?
Well, we have worked really hard. So our graphic designer used to work for Fantasy Flight. He knows his stuff. We have worked really hard to make sure that all of our files are effectively ready to edit and print post Kickstarter. And we're working with arguably one of the most reputable manufacturers, Ludofact in Germany. And so I would like to say July. I think July is totally doable. Just given the scope of the game right now, that's the benefit to running a modest campaign, is there's not really a lot of hiccups. Most of the work's already done for us.
There you go. Cool bean. So yeah, that's great. And so if you're driving right now, we'll make sure we put all this in the show notes so you can just click over. We'll probably have at least a week or so, I would think, or somewhere around when this gets posted. But yeah, go ahead and back Tabula Rasa, a colorful pool bag building game of champions. They're on the Kickstarters, and they're going for stretch goals currently. Let's see, what do we got here? It looks like you're going for the next one currently. I just had them a minute ago. What stretch goal are you working on right now?
Right now we are close to unlocking another brand new champion, and then after that we're going to be going for 5th player. Right now the game is 1, 2, 4. Can play it competitively, co-op, so solo as well, I guess. And we're going for that 5th player after that.
Cool beans. So I imagine you did a lot of playtesting to figure that out. Was there ever anything that you had to scrap that just didn't work when you were playtesting this?
Yeah, there 6 iterations. So we killed a lot of ideas that went into here, and the scope got reduced multiple times. There's a lot of stuff that you dream about putting in the game. That's what expansions or stretch goals are for. You want to give as many people the best experience possible with a core game, and that's what we tried to do here. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff. That's why 5th player is a stretch goal, because to keep the campaign modest and the costs down, we removed all the components for a 5th player. The game can be played 5 players. It's expensive to add a felt bag and a bunch of more crystals and their own pawn and their own tokens. So yeah, it's there are quite a few things we held back on or had to pull out because of just cost.
So we'll let you go for real this time, but we wanted to really thank you for coming on Getting Geeky with Game Relief. We really appreciate it, Chris.
No, absolutely. I can't think of a better way to spend a Friday night, man.
There you go. I hope so. Cool beans.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.